I probably think we can go ahead and begin. It's a few minutes after 4. First, I want to welcome each and every one of you to this call. We're so happy to have you. And today is going to be our very last African Tea Time event. And perhaps we saved the best one for the last, I don't know, but we've been had a good time with all our presenters, all the tea time events. And I just want to remind you that these events are recorded. If you've never maybe been able to attend an African tea time event before, they're all recorded. I'm gonna share our YouTube channel here where you can review all the events that we've had this year. It doesn't really feel like the year has ended, but fortunately or unfortunately, either way, the years come to an end for some of our programs, but we still have other events continuing at the African Studies Center. At this time, I want to welcome our presenters. First, thank them so much because of the sacrifice that they've made to be here. It's very late in Uganda and in Rwanda right now, but thank you so much, Dr. Chemurot and Vestine, for sparing your time to be here and to talk about a very interesting topic that is of interest to many of us, especially somebody like me who grew up in the rural areas, where beekeeping is just like something that, was done for fun. To me, I didn't even consider it some type of agricultural activity. I didn't consider, I was just like, it's beekeeping. But it brings back very good memories when you start talking about this as an academic subject, as a community engagement subject, and as I think livelihood aspect of it. So thank you so much. Again, the theme of our talk today is the contribution of beekeeping to livelihoods and biodiversity conservation in Africa, with a focus on Sudan and Rwanda. And our first presenter is going to be Dr. Chemurot. And Dr. Chemurot is currently a lecturer in Department of Zoology, Entomology, and Fishery Sciences at the University of Makerere in Uganda. And his title is going to be Beekeeping in Uganda and Sudan: What Benefits Are Being Exploited? And by the way, I should have mentioned that his talk is going to touch on Sudan for sure, and then Uganda as well, because he is currently working and researching in Uganda. And we're also going to have our second presenter, Vestine Ingabire. And Vestine is a climate change and environmental officer at the Conservation Action Practitioners, CAP, an organization that is based in Rwanda. So we're going to have Dr. Chemurot present first, and after he's done, we will have Vestine go next. So thank you so much again. As I said, we know it's very late, but we definitely appreciate that you are able to be here to speak to us. So Dr. Chemurot, if you can go ahead, you might want to share your screen and then continue. Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hello.
Is my screen clear to
Yes.
everyone?
Yes.
Okay, yes. By names, I am Moses Chemurot. I am a lecturer at the Department of Zoology, Entomology, and Fisheries Sciences at Makerere University. Before teaching at the university, I worked as a beekeeping extension worker in the northern part of Uganda, that was in a Jumani district. And after that extension experience, I joined the university and started beekeeping among other courses. Currently, I teach both undergraduate and graduate students. I completed my PhD focusing on honeybee health in Uganda from the University of Ghent in Belgium. And I'm happy this evening to give you a presentation focusing on beekeeping in Uganda and Sudan. The talk will mainly center on the benefits people are getting from beekeeping, but also the challenges. What challenges are faced within the sector, and what recommendations do we have for the sector? And so I hope at the end of this talk, you will get a picture of the beekeeping situation in the two countries, and probably the situation may be similar in many other African countries. I will start by giving some facts about Uganda and Sudan. Uganda has a land area of about 240,000 square kilometers. And this land includes parts that are covered by forests, parts covered by water. And over the years, the forest cover in Uganda has been declining. For example, we see that in the 1990s, the forest cover in Uganda was about 24%, but currently the forest cover is only about 8% of the land area. And water covers a great chunk of land in Uganda as well. It covers about 37,000 square kilometers, and that can be explained by the fact that Uganda is endowed with numerous water bodies. We have, for example, the Lake Victoria, which is one of the large freshwater lakes. And there are several wetlands, rivers, and streams, among others. Uganda's population currently is estimated at over 41 million people, and this population has been increasing over the years. And much of this population is engaged in agriculture. And so beekeeping, which we are going to talk about, is part of agriculture. On the other hand, I should say that uh, Uganda is also known to be the Pearl of Africa. Most of you could have heard about it being the Pearl of Africa, which was coined by Churchill in the early 1900s. The reasons for it being known as the Pearl of Africa include the fact that Uganda is endowed with numerous species of animals, including, for example, the mountain gorillas. You would be very happy to view these animals. They are our closest relatives. And Uganda also is rich in terms of fruits. If you visited a Ugandan market, you would be overwhelmed with the fruits available. And the weather conditions in Uganda are exceptionally good, with mean temperatures of about 26 degrees. Moreover, the people here are very receptive. If you visited us, you will always find warmth in Ugandan people. For Sudan, the land area is over 1,880,000 square kilometers, and equally its forest cover has been on the decline, just like in Uganda. And the population size is comparable, relatively comparable to that of Uganda, about 42 million people. Again, agriculture is an important contributor to the economy of Sudan, employing close to 40% of the population. In Sudan, there are two species of honeybees, Apis mellifera and Apis florea. And so we'll be talking about some facts about beekeeping. For example, in Uganda, we see that currently the national apex body that is involved in beekeeping is the Uganda National Apiculture Development Organization, abbreviated as TUNADO. And currently, it is estimated that Uganda has a total of about 1.2 million beekeepers. Out of this, about 102,000 of them have registered with the Apex Beekeeping Body. And the key species that are being kept include Apis mellifera and Melliponula species. Apis mellifera is the honeybee, while for stingless bee species, we have Melliponula bocandei. We also have Melliponula ferruginea, which have, are being kept. We see that in Uganda, the hives that are used include mostly traditional hives. We have the top bar hives and the Langstroth beehives, among others. We also see that on a global scale, much as when you compare beekeeping and other livestock options that are available for farmers, including, for example, piggery, poultry, goat rearing, and cattle rearing, you find that beekeeping was ranked by Jacobs and others in 2015 as second in terms of the earnings that people get from it. We see that this data was collected from records available throughout the world. But we do not have tangible data, particularly for countries like Sudan and Uganda, to be able to rank which livestock option is at what position in terms of its contribution. But I should state at this point that the assessment that was done included all the benefits associated with beekeeping. This, for example, includes the pollination value. Bees contribute to agricultural productivity, and also the hive products that include honey, pollen, propolis, and venom that are associated with beekeeping. That's why you see that beekeeping was ranked second. And what do we see currently in terms of the contribution of beekeeping to households in Sudan and in Uganda? First of all, beekeeping plays a key role in food security. A study which was done by Munyuli and others in around 2011 indicated that out of a crop production valued at US dollars 1.16 billion, close to 0.49 billion was attributed to bee pollination. So this highlights the role of bees in crop productivity. From this data alone, you can see that the crop production value is actually half attributed to the bees. And we see that in our countries as well, farmers, particularly beekeepers, also get direct incomes from sale of hive products. These products include honey, they include beeswax, they include propolis, and bee venom. There are other opportunities available in the sector uh, where people get employed at different nodes of the value chain. People are, for example, employed in hive making and making of other equipment, including the hive tools, the protective gear, Most of you are aware that African honeybees are relatively defensive, so people have to protect themselves using bee suits and overalls to reduce on the bee stings. And so along that line, people are employed. We also see that a number of people, you can see from Uganda, over 1.2 million people are involved in the beekeeping business. So these people are involved in production mostly, and others are involved in product processing. Those who process honey and sell honey are employed within the sector. There is one aspect which has not been tapped, and that is apitourism. People haven't started investing in this sector, and yet it's one of those options that is available to them. We also want to look at beekeeping and how it has contributed to conservation. One is that beekeeping, particularly in our countries, in Uganda, in Sudan, is one of those options that can motivate people to conserve forests. How does this happen? First of all, when people keep bees, they realize the value of trees. They are able to protect the trees, which act as sources of forage for their bees. Secondly, the bees pollinate wild plants, and several species of these wild plants act as food for wildlife. For example, chimpanzees are frugivores, and they rely on fruits which arise from pollination. Most of the fruits could be benefiting from pollinators such as honeybees, and in that case, the bees are contributing to the food for wild animals. And hence, without these bees, animals that rely on fruits in the wild will definitely decline. But we also see that in our countries, bees, particularly honeybees, are being used to reduce on crop raiding by elephants. When colonies of African honeybees are deployed at the forest edge, we see that there is a reduction in crop raids by elephants, but we also see that the conflict between wildlife and the communities reduce. And the studies have also indicated that crop yields, particularly along the forest edge where beekeeping is conducted, increase due to the pollination services provided by the bees, but also the reduced crop raiding by the elephants. And so these are some of the benefits in terms of conservation. Of course, we also have to mention that uh, the leading crops that are being grown, particularly in Uganda and South Sudan, are reliant on bee pollinators for seed production, but also fruit production. In Uganda, for example, we have key crops including cocoa, coffee, pumpkin, and sunflower, among others. These crops are highly dependent on pollinators for their seed production. In Sudan, crops such as groundnut, simsim, eggplant, mangoes, guava, and citrus are equally reliant on bee pollinators. And over the years, we see that the cultivation of pollinator-dependent crops is on the increase. The annual growth rate of land area which is being used for the production of pollinator-dependent crops is much higher than the production of non-pollinator dependent crops. Again, this suggests that going forward, we need the bees more. Here I show you a number of crops that are planted in our countries, in Uganda: cocoa, coffee, passion fruit, and simsim and pumpkin. You can see the bees visiting each of these in some of these pictures. It's clear that these plants are visited by honeybees, for example. And I should also say that much as we see visitation by these different uh, bees, honeybees, stingless bees, solitary bees, and many other groups of insects, we have limited studies that have looked at the pollination values of the different species. And again, when you look at in terms of the technologies that are used, you find that in Uganda and South Sudan, traditional beekeeping that involves the use of traditional hives is more predominant, although the use of improved hives has been introduced. And we see that the honey yield is not as expected. A study we conducted in Uganda, for example, in 2015 and 16 indicated that honey yield, particularly in the eastern part of Uganda around Mount Elgon and in the western highlands of Uganda, particularly in the Rwenzoris, the honey yields were low. They were about, on average, 4 kilograms per hive per year. A study conducted in Sudan indicated that uh, beekeepers get about 13 kilograms per hive per year. Of course, much as these values seem to be significantly different from each other, we should understand that the collection of this data isn't the same. For example, the study I quote here from Sudan used questionnaires among farmers, and we are aware that farmers may not keep records. Our beekeepers do not keep quality records, which results into them either overestimating or underestimating the yields. Much as beekeeping has a lot of potential, as we've already looked at it in terms of the hive products, in terms of the pollination values, in terms of its contribution to conservation, we see that there are a number of challenges affecting the sector in Uganda, in Sudan. These challenges include, for example, the increasing use of agrochemicals in agriculture. We see that more crop farmers are using chemicals to control weeds, but also to control pests of the different crops. There is also a declining forage cover for the bees. Farmers are opening farmlands, and as they open up farmland, they are clearing different tree species, resulting into a decline in forest cover and forage for the bees. We have also seen a report of new pests and diseases. The varroa mites, for example, have I will elaborate more on some of this going forward. We conducted a consultative meeting sometime last year
Yes.
around.
How are you doing, Pepe?
Hello, am I clear?
think somebody who had their mic on. It's okay. I think they've muted themselves. Sorry.
Okay, I can continue. So we conducted a consultative meeting with some beekeepers in some regions of Uganda, particularly in the Western Highlands and the Southern Highlands. And we asked them to rank some of the key issues that they thought affect the sector. Some of the challenges they highlighted included, for example, limited extension services, issues to do with the use of agrochemicals being on the increase, declining forage, and the aspect of pests such as the wax moth. And of our interest, we asked beekeepers if they knew anything related to honeybee diseases, and not even one beekeeper knew that bees had diseases. And a study conducted by Amulen and others in 2017 in Uganda recorded about 20 pesticides which were detected in bee products and on bees. Of course, much as these pesticides were recorded, we see that the limits, they are within, they are below the maximum residue limits that are recommended by the European Union. But these records indicate that going forward, there is a likelihood that these pesticides are likely to increase and may have impacts on honeybee health. How do these different pesticides get into the bees? We see that farmers may spray these pesticides on their crops, and once they spray these pesticides, which can be insecticides, herbicides, or fungicides on crops, these may either drift by air or through the soil and water, reaching apiaries or where people keep their hives. But we also have some pesticides that are systemic in nature. That means the plants will take up using their vascular system, and this eventually reach the flowers. And when bees visit the flowers to collect pollen and nectar, they get into contact with these pesticides, which may have uh, lethal effects or sublethal effects on honeybees. So, in addition to the pesticides, there are a number of pathogens that have been detected in our honeybees. 5 viruses were detected in Uganda. Bacterial and fungal diseases have also been detected, and parasites such as varroa mites, which are ectoparasites, and they are also transmitters of honeybee viruses, have been detected in Uganda. I will try to elaborate on some of these threats. One is that on the part of honeybee viruses, the 5 viruses that have been detected in Uganda include the deformed wing virus, the black queen cell virus, the acute bee paralysis virus, sackbrood virus, and Lake viruses. And these viruses have been detected in 3 different agroecological zones of Uganda: in the Western Highlands, the Eastern Highlands, and also in the Mid-North agroecological zone. These viruses have been associated, some of these viruses have been associated with colony collapse disorder in Europe and in America. And also in a study we conducted, we showed that honeybee viral diversity was higher over the wet season compared to the dry season in the eastern and western highland agroecological zones of Uganda. So we see that multiple viruses are more prevalent over the wet season, suggesting that the effects of season impact on probably the transmission of these viruses. And the other study we conducted also indicated the presence of Penibacillus larvae, which is the causative agent for American foul brood. We detected this in the Western Highland agroecological zone, but did not detect other brood diseases of honeybees. And of much interest also is the fungal pathogens of honeybees. Two species had been recorded previously, Nosema apis and Nosema serrana. These are associated with nosemosis in honeybees. And when we collected our samples for analysis in Uganda, we were able to detect samples which had visible spores under the microscope. But when we conducted the PCR, we did not detect these targeted fungi. And so we decided to use the family primers, which showed that what we were dealing with was Microsporidia. And later on, we were able to detect that we had a new species of Microsporidia that affect honeybees in Uganda. We carried out transmission electron microscopy, and we amplified the 16S small subunit ribosomal RNA, and it clearly showed that we were dealing with a new species which was closely related to Nosema apis, as shown in this phylogenetic tree. The new Microsporidian that we detected had unique characteristics, like, for example, in terms of size, it was much more smaller in size compared to the other known species that infect honeybees. It had also fewer polar filament coils compared to Nosema apis and Nosema serrana. And the infection rates of the new Microsporidian were higher than Nosema apis and Nosema serrana. The mites, particularly varroa mites that have been detected in Uganda, were haplotyped, and the study that haplotyped varroa mites indicated that we have the Korean haplotype of Varroa destructor, which is a widespread species of Varroa, and it is more virulent than the Japanese haplotype. Equally, Varroa mites have been detected in Sudan. And in the study we conducted in Uganda, we showed that viral diversity was positively correlated with Varroa mite infestation rates, but we did not detect viruses in mites from virus-positive colonies. So this raises a question as to whether the mites in Uganda are not transmitting the viruses, or could it be that the viral titer within the mites are below detectable limits? This requires further investigation. And when you look at the potential impact of environmental factors on the different parasites and pathogens, particularly viruses in this case, you see that there are potential impacts of environmental factors such as land use and season on viral transmission. We see that over the wet season, viral diversity is much higher than during the dry season. And we see that honeybee colonies that are under eucalyptus plantations had a higher viral diversity compared to colonies in the farmlands and protected areas. For the case of Penibacillus larvae, which causes American fall brood, a colony which was detected in Uganda positive for this pathogen absconded. And this was only in one season. In the next season, the pathogen was not detected, suggesting that there are low infestation rates of this pathogen. And the clinical signs of the disease were also not observed. This clearly highlights that there is a possibility that behavioral mechanisms such as abscondment and swarming could be contributing to these low infection rates. The other important factor is that wax moths are prevalent in apiaries here in Uganda and even in Sudan. And these wax moths are known to destroy combs, hence reducing the potential of transmission of bacterial infections. The beekeeping practices also in our countries, which include low bar hives, reduces the chances of retaining these pathogens in hives. And so we should be advocating for practices that reduce on parasite infestation in colonies. And in one of our studies, we've also shown that there are less spores of microsporidia, particularly the fungal infections in honeybees, in colonies that are kept near protected areas compared to under eucalyptus plantations or in farmlands. We hypothesize that this is potentially due to nutritional deficiencies in areas that are farmlands and also purely under eucalyptus plantations, and such nutritional deficiencies could be promoting spore multiplication in honeybees. And another part of our work indicated that hives that are placed high, because our beekeepers place hives at different heights, hives that are placed high have lower counts of microsporidia. And of course, this is likely to be due to the reduced chances of reinfection arising from the spores that are shed onto the ground. If the hive is near the ground, it is likely that during rains there is a spillover. There is a likelihood that the, the rains will be able to spill the spores back into the hive if the hive is on the ground compared to when it is high up on the trees. We have talked about the low honey yields, and we see that particularly in two agroecological zones of Uganda, the eastern and the western highlands, the honey yields are quite low. We see that a yield of close to 3 kilograms per hive was harvested during our study in 2017. Apparently, these low yields could be due to the declining forage for the bees. We also think that this could be due to poor colony management practices And some beekeepers tend to keep many colonies together, implying that issues to do with the carrying capacity may impact on the productivity of colonies. And the potential effects of the emerging parasites and pathogens and also the pesticides could be responsible for these low yields. We see that um, already viral diversity, increase in viral diversity in colonies was negatively correlated to, honey yield, particularly the number of combs with honey. This clearly suggests that viruses could be responsible for some of the low honey yields that we observe. And in our study on Penibacillus larvae, the causative agent for American foul brood, we carried out some bioassays which showed that Apis mellifera carnica larvae was equally affected by the strain, the Eric 1 strain of P. larvae that we detected in Uganda. This was comparable to the reference strain which we used. And the microsporidia were also associated with the reduced honey yields, but of interest is also Varroa destructor, which seems not to currently impact on honey yields in our countries. But I should mention that apart from the other factors that we've talked about, we see that a reduction in forage associated with the rampant bush burning could also be leading to these low honey yields that we currently observe. Rampant bush burning in regions of northern Uganda are known to cause pollution and disrupt ecosystems. And these fires also affect farmers' crops and lead to food insecurity and poverty. In a district of Adjumani in northern Uganda, we recorded about 30% of the farmers reporting losing hives and honey to bush burning. And a beekeeper on average lost about 3 hives in a year to bushfires alone. And we were able to record that there was also a reduction in honey production, either due to the destruction of the forage or the hives that were destroyed. Equally, there were financial losses across other household income generating activities such as crop farming, because domestic animals roamed and destroyed crops, among others. We can see from this illustration here, hives that are burnt on ground. These hives were burnt as a result of bushfires. A study conducted by Kasangaki and others in 2018 on colony performance in Uganda colonies was negatively correlated to altitude. But colonies in protected areas performed better than those that were located in farmlands and under eucalyptus plantations. This was in a study we carried out, which showed that colonies that were in protected areas performed much better in terms of strength and in terms of the productivity as well. And colonies in the Lake Victoria agroecological zone did not perform well. Again, this is a suggestion that there's regional differences in the productivity of honeybee colonies. Overall, we see that in terms of the threats to honeybees, in terms of their future, we see that there is a changing environment for these bees. We see that the current environment may have reduced mortality because of the low pesticide use. But going forward, the pesticide use is increasing. We also see that the forage diversity is declining, and land use changes are moving away from what should promote increased productivity for the bees to reduced productivity and to an environment which is unhealthy and promoting parasite or pathogen intensity to increase. And hence, there might be a high mortality for our bees and reduced productivity in our colonies. So we need the following. First of all, as countries, we need, particularly Sudan, Uganda, and other countries in Africa, we need to develop honeybee health monitoring systems that are going to guide interventions on bee health. We also need to promote proper management of colonies, and we need to create awareness among the beekeepers on how they should manage their colonies for better productivity. Setting up bee reserves or areas where bees can obtain quality forage are critical in this regard as well. We need to skill our extension workers to be able to manage the different threats that are affecting the sector. We also need approaches in our beekeeping systems that retain the local genetic resources, because apparently our local honeybees seem to still be tolerant or resistant to the threats, particularly the parasites and pathogens. And we need to look for local solutions such as using botanicals to be able to manage the different bee parasites and pathogens that are recorded. And the studies that have been conducted so far on African honeybee pathosphere have used bias techniques, and hence there is need to use unbiased techniques so that we can understand the range of pathogens that are affecting the African honeybees. Because from our study alone, we were able to detect a new microsporidium, and so there is a possibility that there are other parasites that and pathogens that have not been detected, but they could be impacting on the productivity of colonies. And so we also need to look at the mechanisms through which our bees are able to resist or tolerate the different honeybee threats. We have talked about untapped resources. We've talked about apitourism as being untapped, and so there is need to look at ways of exploiting these uses of bees that are untapped. And overall, there is need for political support to reverse the threats affecting the bees and to promote their sustainable exploitation in our countries. Now, at our department at Makerere University, Department of Zoology, Entomology and Fisheries Sciences, we have some opportunities through our linkage with the farmers in Uganda. We have a strong network with the beekeepers which can give experience to visitors to see what is happening in the Ugandan beekeeping situation. And we also conduct field studies with our students. For example, currently we are conducting a study on the pollination values of bees on some key crops such as the pumpkin. integrating beekeeping into other livelihood options is also important. And sometimes when we go out to the field, we make observations that are critical. Like, for example, recently during the COVID pandemic, we saw that some fishermen were preserving fish using beeswax. And so we are exploring the, the potential of integrating beekeeping into options like fish farming. If, for example, bee products can preserve fish, then that means the two can be integrated together. And we also do collaborative works with our counterparts within Uganda, like with the National Agricultural Research Organization. We are currently involved in the domestication of stingless bees, Meliponula bocandei. And so if, for example, you have students out there who are interested in areas like this, we are always ready to support them. And we also take our students to the field to see what happens in the farm situation. I wish to thank the different organizations. I am a member of the Entomological Association of Uganda, and the different organizations like TUNADO, the Uganda National Apiculture Development Organization, the National Agricultural Research Organization, the Ministry of Agriculture, our university, Makerere University, play key roles, particularly in ensuring that beekeeping is sustainable in Uganda and beyond. And I wish to appreciate them all. I thank the African Tea team for organizing this meeting, for inviting me, and I thank you all for listening. Thank you. Back to you, Damari.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Chemurot, for this very fascinating presentation. As I said in the beginning, sometimes some of us, when we hear about bees or beekeeping, we're thinking about honey, just honey. But actually, I've been taking notes. I'm one of those people. So I've been taking notes about the benefits, many of them that I didn't even think about, surely. Like apitourism, it's my very first time to hear a word like apitourism. I didn't really know the word exists even. So, and as you said, I was having a question about how established is this type of tourism in Uganda, and you've already mentioned that it's an area that needs to be explored. So thank you so much. I saw a question. Let me open the chat. There was a question. Okay. So Riley was asking, where was the colony infected by American foul brood located in Uganda? Foul brood, that is, located in Uganda.
Yes, Damari, should I respond to that?
Yes, please go ahead. We'll have a few minutes for some QA and then we move on to Vestine.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, the study which we conducted on American fall brood indicated that the signs and symptoms of the disease were not detected, but a colony was positive for American foul brood pathogen, that is Penibacillus larvae. This study particularly was done in the western highlands of Uganda, are near Queen Elizabeth National Park. And of interest also is the fact that this colony, which was positive, absconded. And so in the second season, when we went out to sample, the colony had absconded, and we still collected remains from the same hive and did not detect the pathogen. And so we see that there is a low infestation level of this parasite and even other parasites. And I have tried to explain that there are possibilities that could explain this. One is that uh, the behavior of the African honeybee, which includes it swarming more regularly, absconding regularly, could reduce on the infestation rates of this pathogen in hives. Secondly, the beekeeping system, which involves removal of the entire comb during harvesting using traditional hives and the top bar hives, which unlike the Langstroth or frame hives that would retain the comb, this beekeeping system that is currently used reduces on the possibility of these pathogens accumulating in hives. And so we need to investigate further to see what could exactly be happening within our systems. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that response. And there's also another question, kind of not a follow-up really, from Riley. She wants to know which PAs were studied.
Yes, the PAs, I think the PA, because the PA is a protected area, I have highlighted that the studies that I've talked about were conducted within the Western Highlands. Specifically, the PAs that we have in the Western Highlands include Queen Elizabeth National Park and the Kibale National Park. So the beekeepers that we sampled were within or along the edge of those protected edges of those protected areas, and also the Eastern Highlands, that is Mount Elgon National Park. So those are the areas, in this case, the protected areas that were sampled in the studies highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't really think there are any more questions on the chat. Did somebody have a question for Dr. Chemurot before we go ahead? You can unmute yourself or raise your hand. All right. So when you have a chance, you can go to the chat and see many people saying thank you for your talk, which was very, very informative. So at this time, I want to welcome Vestine. Vestine, if you can have your camera on and go ahead and have your talk.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, dear Damaris. Let me share my presentation.
Sure. Vestine, is it working for you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Let me.
If you have the presentation open, you can. I hope I made you a co-host. Let's see. Yeah.
Oh, I think. Does everyone see my PowerPoint or?
Yeah, it's on the screen.
Okay, thank you. My name is Vestine Ingabire. I'm from Rwanda. I work with the CAP Conservation Action Practitioners. I'm going to share with you experiences from my country about beekeeping activities, the contribution to community and biodiversity conservation, as well as the challenge they are currently face. This is what we are going to see here. I think some people, they don't know where our country is. This is Rwanda. Rwanda shares land borders with 4 countries. In the east, we share the Tanzania. In the south, we share Burundi. In north, we share Uganda, and in the west, we have Democratic Republic of Congo. Here are some Rwandan features. Rwanda is just a small lofty country. We have a lot of mountains. There is another name they call Rwanda, like thousands of hills. Our average temperature is varies between 23 to 27 degrees Celsius. The area is 26,338 kilometers squared. Our capital city is Kigali. Current population of our country is 12.2 million people. Our local language, or our mother language, is Kinyarwanda. We are going to see about the history of beekeeping in Rwanda. Beekeeping has been practiced across many generations in our country. The activity has been basically traditional and non-commercial. People, they didn't take care about beekeeping activities as like the commercial activity. So traditional beekeeping practices in Uganda have been likened to honey lobbying rather than honey harvesting, because in the past, there were no laws, there were no ministerial orders that control those beekeeping activities. So some people, they were just positioning their hives, and other people came and destroying their other neighbors' hives. So it was lobbying rather than honey harvesting. The first modern hives in Rwanda was introduced by King Baudouin of Belgium in 1966. It happened when the king, he came to visit Rwanda, and when he found the beekeeping activities, he was so happy, and he gifted the Rwanda the hives as just gift, because he was so happy to see beekeeping activities in our country. The government institution and other stakeholders have been involved in supporting beekeeping activities in Rwanda. For instance, Arida Minagri, those are Minister of Agriculture, Rwanda Development Board, World Conservation Society, and in the 1980s, government of Rwanda was initiated beekeeping with introduction and intensification of modern beekeeping. It's where the Rwanda, they woke up and see that modern beekeeping is really productive, and they started initiate those modern ones. In 2007, National Beekeeping Strategic Plan 2000, it have been implemented from 2007 to 2012, and this National Strategic Plan was submitted by Minister of Agriculture, Minagri. This GP plan was intended to incorporate and adapt lessons learned from the best practices within the region. Those regions from Kenya, from Uganda, from Ethiopia. It's where even we have top hives. We introduced them from Kenya. In 2013, the law number 25, 2013, was established, determining the organization and functioning of beekeeping in Rwanda. This law was signed and gazetted on 8 July 2013. In June 2014, Rwanda was among third-party countries accredited to export honey to the European Union. So here we currently we export the honey to the European countries, but unfortunately we don't have enough productivity due to the challenge we are going to see in the next slide. In Rwanda, we have also ministerial order number 001, and it's relating to hygiene, beekeeping, and modalities for use of toxic substances. So here, it is this ministerial order. Just if there are some people want to those cooperatives, they have to follow these ministerial orders. Like they have to wash their hands. They have to use the appropriate equipment so that they can follow this ministerial order. The ministerial order instruction number 001, it's related to positioning of beehives, honey harvesting equipment, and issuance of beekeeping certificate. So here, those, even if we have cooperatives, they have to follow everything. They have to follow instructions that have been set by the government. So and those cooperatives, if they want to set like those hives, they have to follow everything. We have also Prime Minister Order number 04, establishing the Union of Beekeepers in Rwanda and determining its organization and functioning. For example, through this order, Rwanda has Ubwiza bwa Nyungwe Beekeepers Union, Volcanoes Beekeepers Cooperative Union, as well as Gishwati Mukula Beekeepers Cooperative Union. I think maybe there are some people who don't know our national parks. This is every union is based to each national park. Honey harvesting season in Rwanda, currently it's from January to March and June to August. And Rwanda has more than 83,000 beekeepers and 465,000 beehives, including 330,000 traditional hives, 75,000 long-stroke hives, and 90,000 top hives. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the top bar hives are introduced from Kenya. Production of traditional hives varies between these hives. The hives they don't produce the equal productivity. The traditional one, their productivity varies between 7 to 10 kgs. And top bar hives, it varies 18 to 20 kgs, as well as long stroke hives, their kgs are 20 to 40 like per hives. So that's what we have in our country. You can see, for example, of the hives we have, as I mentioned, this is the first one, traditional hives, top bar hives, and long-stroke hives. These hives are based, is one example that the hives based around the Nyungwe National Park. It is one of our national parks we have here. The beekeepers in Rwanda are divided into three categories. We have semi-professional, those people who spend like 40 to 60% of their time on beekeeping. They spend like around 4 to 5 days doing beekeeping activities. Other like remain to they just involve on other activities like agriculture, businesses, and so on. We have also a sideline production system where the farmers keeping some hives for some additional income, but not investing much time or money in this activity. Those people, they are just to work around 3 days per week. So they don't spend their much time in beekeeping activities, but they get a little bit income from beekeeping activities. We have also in Rwanda, we have hobbyists. Beekeeping, they keep the hives, 2 to 3 hives just for their own use. And when the friend came to visit them, they just share. But even those hobbyists, they don't join the cooperatives because they just have little, they just have a few hives. So, but they just follow those laws. When if the bees can sting the neighbor, they have to pay, as the law said. When your bees sting to your neighbor, you have to pay 10,000 Rwandan francs. For instance, in Musanze district, near Volcan National Park, beekeeping is a common practice with almost every family boosting some 2 to 3 hives in their gardens. So this is where people, they just enjoying to have hives in their gardens, but they have to follow the laws. The lessons of bees found in Rwanda, we have, as Dr. Moses said, I saw also he mentioned some of them. We have Apinifera Tutilo, we have also Apinifera monticola, we have Apinifera adansoni. In Rwanda, there are also 4 distinctly different ecotypes of African honeybee. We have the Nyungwe lowland forest type, the Lunga highland forest type, Akagera African savanna type, as well as Mukula lower land forest type. Those are where you can find those African honeybee. We are going to say that the contribution of beekeeping to the community. Beekeeping plays major role in our community, but mostly, particularly those rural areas. It is an income generating activities. Here, people, they invest much money. Those same professional one, they invest much money from beekeeping activities, and they are able to pay school fees for their children, and also like buying the cows. They are also able to buy other things they need in their life. Beekeeping also involving medicinal purposes. For example, during this pandemic, most people, they just use honey and lemon. Like, I don't know if you guys have these things in your country. People, they just take 1 cup of hot tea and mix the honey and lemon and so on, so that they just say it can help them to be okay. And most people here, they use honey as table meal, as well as they use those honey for making local beers. Yeah. Pollinating pollinating services increase quality and quantity of food products of the community, like those the hives that have been positioning around the gardens, they help those pollination services, and this contribute into the food security for the community. The fiscal year 2019-2020, Rwanda exported 3,399 kilograms of honey to the Europe. Then they generating for $14,003. This money they come back to contribute in the mostly in the local community, like constructing schools and other infrastructures that needed there. For instance, we have also here, like this man is called Olivier. So he said, so modern beekeeping. Olivier, he lives in Gicumbi district in the northern Rwanda. His production of honey increased from since he was used those traditional practices, but when he shifted to the modern one, he said his production have been increased from 20 to 90 per season. So his income increased up to 70,000 per season, Rwandan francs. With that money, he was able to construct his house, install electricity. As in our country, most of those rural areas, they don't have electricity. And he was able to get married. Maybe it was the goal he have been set. He also bought one cow. So this is a great achievement for this guy from the beekeeping activities. Contribution of beekeeping to the biodiversity in Rwanda. Beekeeping doesn't contribute only to community, it also contributes to the biodiversity conservation inside the national park, as well as the outside national park. Beekeeping along national parks are an ideal tool to raise awareness about the value of forest and engage people in aware protection and conservation. Here you see most of the people who do these activities, these beekeeping activities, they are the one who report. They are the one who report those illegal activities that happen around the national parks. Beekeeping reduces illegal activities in the national parks. For instance, poaching, cutting of trees, mining, and so on. So here, people will just like use the national park in the illegal ways. But when the beekeeping come up as the income generating activity, most of the people, they were just stopped. They stopped to cutting those trees. Instead of the cutting trees, they just protecting them so that they can get the production from beekeeping. Beekeeping conserves biodiversity through natural pollination of trees. For example, we have here in Syzygium, it is a plant species found in Uganda National Park, but we have also these Syzygium trees in Volcano National Park. We are going to see the challenge. Beekeeping in Uganda are still more traditional than modern and with lower productivity. For example, this is the cooperative. Quill is one of the cooperatives that have been harvested only 20 kgs of honey from 100 hives in season of March. The last month, they reported to me that they harvested 20 kgs from 100 hives. So due to use of those due to use of those traditional practices, they just use, you can see the second picture, they use this most of these hives. So that's why they just get a little productivity. And also they told me that their bees have been killed by those pesticides because these cooperatives are based not around the national parks. They are based in the eastern province of Rwanda. So they have to positioning their hives in their garden. They have little lands, like 1 hectare, but around that land, they have there are other agriculture activities. So when their bees just go out for touching like flowers and so on, then they have been killed. That's why they get a little productivity. As I mentioned, use of pesticides that kill bees. In Rwanda, we are still facing this challenge. All over the country, we are still facing this challenge of pesticides. With animal destroyed beehives, for instance, chimpanzee, before the law published, and also those ministerial orders related to positioning of hives, community or people were just they are just positioning hives inside the national parks. So these leads the chimpanzee come and like searching for honey and destroy those hives. So after the law published, people, they were just removed their hives from the national parks to the outside, the protected areas. So from the outside, and as like those chimpanzees, they know the taste, they know smells of the honey, so they just come out inside from the outside. They just come out from the protected areas for searching those honey. So hence they just destroy those hives. We have also here challenge limited number of young people and women in beekeeping activities. Most of the people who have knowledge and who are willing to do it, who are willing to do beekeeping activities, are most of them, those are the men and also the older people. So we are still have the challenge of those limited number of young people as well as women. With honey hunting inside the park, which is associated with increased risk of the fire to the park. Here, most of the people, they just want to hunt the honey into the parks. And most of them, they use the traditional, as in our country, we are still use traditional hives more than modern hives. So this leads the fire to the national parks and hence destroy a lot of biodiversity, like trees, affect the tree generations, affect the birds as well as mammals. We are still facing the challenge of limited knowledge, skills, and basic beekeeping equipment. As we, for instance, long street hive, they are very expensive in our country, and they exported from Singapore. So this made them to be expensive. It cost like $60 in our country. So most of those people from the rural areas, and not only rural areas, anyone can't afford this because it's a little bit expensive, more than the money they invest from the beekeeping activities. So case, it's just the challenge we are currently facing. We have also limited financial resources as a challenge in our country. Like most of the community, those cooperatives, they don't have money to progress their activities, like to improve their productivity. We have also another challenge, like lack of land. Most of the people who are not based around the national park, as I mentioned before, there are some cooperatives that have like 1 hectare, a half hectare. So they don't have where they can expand their productivity, where they can positioning their hives so that they can get more productivity. We are also lack of research. In our country, we don't have a lot of papers have been published that related with beekeeping activities or beekeeping or bees. We are still have little few entomologists in our country. So it is really sad as the baseline information are the key to progress. So this is the challenge we have. We have also a challenge, climate change as the challenge. Most of as I mentioned, in the eastern province, there are a lot of droughts. At the same time, flooding. So this destroyed those hives through flooding, and also when the temperature is high, some bees, they just moved from one place to another. So this leads those beekeepers to get lower productivity from their activity. Thank you so much. I do appreciate for your patience. Anyone who have questions, please just you can write in the chat box or just yeah, thank you.
Well, another wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Vestine. As I said, I'm here taking notes, and it's so much information new information that I'm learning today. So before I ask my question, I see Dr. Chemurot is asking here, in your view, what are the main causes of the low yields in the site reported, that's 20 kgs from 100 hives? And how can this challenge of low yields be addressed? Should Rwandans embrace frame hives over traditional hives? Those are kind of 3 questions in one. If you want me to repeat, I can go ahead and do so. So the first one is, what do you think is causing the low yields?
Oh, let me respond. Thank you so much for the questions. The one cause of the lower yields, people here still lack of knowledge how to use, even if they have. First, let me respond. First of all, people here, they still use traditional one that lead to the lower productivity. Even the second cause is people still have they're just a lack of skills. They have limited knowledge how to manage. Another one, they still have a lack of equipment. They don't have equipment. Like, for example, the smokers that they use, it costs $30 here in Rwanda. So it's a little bit expensive to those local people. They can't able to afford those smokes. And also most of the people I have visited last year, they were just have one closet, and the cooperative, like they were 50 people, 50, and they have one closet. So they still have the challenge, as I mentioned, limited knowledge how to harvest, you see some people when they use those traditional practices, they cut comb. So for the next season, it become hard for them. Most of the bees, they just moved from one place to another. So yeah, thank you. What was the next question?
Yeah, the next one, do you think this challenge can be either minimized or addressed?
Oh, thank you so much. I think these people, they have to increase modern hives than use traditional one. The second one, they need capacity building. The government or other stakeholders have to strengthen their capacity in this activity so that they can improve their productivity. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, that answers the last question that was about, do you think Rwandans should embrace frame hives over traditional hives? I think you responded to that. You think more modern hives would work better or offer more yields? Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. So I don't know if anybody else has a question. As I said, you can unmute yourself, raise your hand, and ask verbally, or you can as well add it on the chat. So I had a question, and this can be for you or for Dr. Chemurot as well. I have discovered or noticed, I should say, not discovered really, that there are different shades of honey. Some look more white or creamish, some are dark brown, the usual color that I'm used to. I wonder what causes these different colors of honey. Is there anything to do with how they are maybe, kept? I don't know. I just wanted to ask, is there a reason why we have different shades of honey?
Yes, Damali. May I respond?
Sure, please, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Now, we have different colors of honey depending on the forage source, that is the plant type, the plant species that are visited by the bees. The color of the honey will depend on that. That is one key factor that is important for you to understand, that forage source influences the color of the honey. The second issue is to do with the water content of the honey. If you harvest, for example, honey which is not mature, honey has to be sealed. Yeah, it has to be sealed by the bees in the comb. So if it is not mature, there is a likelihood that the water content will be high, and therefore that would increase chances of fermentation, the honey fermenting, and the fermentation changes also the color of the honey. So those are the two key factors, and also duration of storage and aspects to do with the processing. If honey is, for example, processed by heating, which is not recommended, yeah, the honey tends to be more darker when it is boiled or heated because of the changes associated with the sugars. There is normally a breakdown of fructose into HMF, hydroxymethyl fumarate, which is a compound produced as a result of deterioration of fructose, one of the key sugars in honey. So it is important that beekeepers get aware that they are not supposed to heat or boil the honey, processed by boiling. Yeah, thank you. I hope I've tried to answer you.
Yes, you have. And really, you have answered the questions, because I always ask, is it the most The first thing that I think of when I see these different types, I'm like, is it expired? Like, what type of honey should I get? Even when I go to the stores here, sometimes I'm confused. Some, they say it's raw. So I wonder, is it because it says raw honey? Is it because it's organic? Why do we have these different types? So at least I have a sense
That's
when
good.
I
That's good.
look at the show. So
So
Vestine,
next
did you
time
have
when
any?
you go to show,
You
next
should go
time
ahead.
when you go, yeah, yes, what I'm saying is that next time when you go to buy honey, you should try to understand where the honey has come from. If it is from a forest, for example, it is likely to be dark honey. Forest honey is usually dark, reason being that the bees will visit a number of different species, which will influence the final color of the honey. And if it is, for example, acacia honey in Uganda, or collected from the drier parts of Uganda, it is light colored because the bees are visiting acacia mostly. And so the honey is lighter. So I hope you will enjoy the honey next time.
Yeah, at least I'm educated now. I'll take some time to figure out what I want. Thank you so much. I don't know if Vestin had a comment and whether anybody else has a question.
Thank you, dear Damos. I see one expert here we have. I think if from in my country called Hakizimana Vicente, and if he wants like to share something, or yeah,
Oh,
he can, yeah, to say
okay.
something about the color of honey. They have a lot of honey. Is the one who stands, is the one in charge of all cooperative we have in our country.
Oh, that's wonderful. Hakizimana, we welcome you. I think it says still trying to connect. I don't know if
Yeah.
he's in.
Okay.
Yeah. Brain boy, maybe he's gonna join in. Anybody with a comment, question before we wrap this up? It looks like so many people know already about honey, or you've presented so well that the questions have been responded to, which is very good. And I don't think Hazikimana was able to join in, but I want to thank you so much, Dr. Chemurot and Vestine, for sparing your time again to come and speak to us about this very important topic. As I said, it's not so many of us actually that know all the aspects of beekeeping in Africa and maybe in other parts of the world. It could be the same challenges, it could be different challenges, but we really appreciate that, at least on my part, I've learned a lot. And as we said, this talk is recorded. And if you have friends who are not able to be here because of the timing, you can feel free to share the link with them. And they are welcome to review everything that we have from the African Studies Center. So at this point, I want to conclude by saying that this is again our last tea time event for those of us who are here in East Lansing, but we will continue again in the fall semester. But for this year, this is our, I feel, I mean, it's not unfortunate because we've learned enough, but for this year, but I still feel like talks like this really keep us together. But I'm hoping that you'll still keep connected to the center. There are many more other events that are being hosted by the African Studies Center. You can go to our website and see what else is happening. The Eye on Africa is one that will continue until the end of, close to the end of the month, I believe. And you can join us, really. Check our website and see what else we are doing. Other than that, I want to, on behalf of Tutilo, Dr. Mudumba Tutilo was the one that was supposed to facilitate the talk today, but his internet couldn't allow him to go ahead. I don't know if, Tutilo, can you hear us? Perhaps he's not even able to respond. So on his behalf, I really want to apologize. He wanted to communicate with us. He's one of our facilitators of the African Tea Time, but unfortunately wasn't able to do it today. We have two more that I think some of you saw Ebenezer in the beginning. He's also one of our facilitators, and you might be able to see them next time. But until next academic year, I want to say bye and thank you so much again to our presenters and to everybody that was able to join our event today. Bye.